Hey, I'm Bob Davis. Thanks for joining me on What the Flash Fridays. Today I want to share with you how creative you can be with your Speedlight, with some of the cool features that are built into it. All of our modern Speedlights have the ability to focus the flash head to match the focal length of the lens. You actually have a little lens here on the front of the Speedlight that will focus that beam of light from 200 millimeters as wide as 14 millimeters. This being the Canon 600 EX-RT. So with this Speedlight, we can actually focus that beam of light to match the focal length of the lens. And you also have a little reflective window panel you can pull out here, which again is another lens that will spread that light out. I remember back in the old days when I got my first Vivitar 285, you can push and pull. You had like a 3 focal length range of, I want to say 35 to 70. Now you have the incredible capability of using it as a creative tool, which I learned later in life. Because I'm always pushing the buttons, playing, I really believe in being green and growing. So this flash head is currently set in an auto zoom feature. And what that means is once it's in the hot shoe of the camera, as I zoom my focal length of the lens from 24 to 70, the Speedlight actually matches. So that beam of light matches to get the same spread of light to evenly match the focal length of the lens. Very useful, but rarely do I ever shoot on camera direct flash. On that rare occasion I do, I'm going to do something creative. So let's say I'm shooting at 24 millimeters on the lens, but I want to create that spotlight effect on a couple. Well, then I'll manually take control. I'll push the manual zoom feature on this Speedlight, push the zoom head, and then I zoom it all the way to 200. My lens is at 24, Speedlight is at 200. It's going to create a wonderful spotlight effect. Now, it doesn't give the same defined edge as if I was using a light shaper such as a snoot or a grid, but it does the trick in a pinch. Same thing as if I want to do backlighting, get that Speedlight off camera, use a Speedlight transmitter such as a STE3 or another Speedlight to be the master. I would zoom the flash head in manually as far as it could go, like 200 millimeters, get it behind the subject and just out of frame so we're not shooting into the light. And I'm going to get that light right where I want it. Really efficient, creative use of light. So you can control the shape of the light. Same thing when you're bouncing your flash. I had a call the other day from a photographer. He's like, hey man, Bob, can you help me out? I'm like, sure, what's going on? He's like, I don't know what's happening, man. All of a sudden my bounce flash just looks terrible. I'm not getting that soft diffused light that I was getting. I said, well, what are you using? He's like, I'm using a light sphere. It was rocking and all of a sudden it's not. Can you help me out? I'm like, okay, get your flash, get your camera, let's walk through it. And what it was is he somehow hit the manual zoom button, didn't realize he did that, and the flash got zoomed all the way out. He was using a 580 EX2, so the flash head was zoomed to 105, thereby not allowing the light to come out and disperse and make the efficient use of the light sphere. So you were actually having a spotlight come out going straight up, bouncing or spilling in a narrow beam of light, causing it to be more harsh and not as diffused. So I said, just push that zoom button, turn it all the way to default, and when it's in default mode, it's just double hashtag marks, or go to 24 millimeter. So the light comes out of the flash head, the cup fills up with light, and you're back in business with your nice diffused light. And he's like, oh man, I didn't realize that. It helps to push the buttons, it helps to read the manual. Know your gear inside and out. So I'm going to cut away now. We're going to show how this flash head really zooms in. As I said, it goes from 14 millimeters up to 200. And I'm going to show you some images that I did outside with 2 Speedlights, no light modifiers other than the flash tubes, and what you can do to focus that beam of light. Come along on this journey with me. Okay, in this cutaway feature, we're going to go over the LCD and the function and controls you have of your Speedlight. We're going to focus primarily on the zoom feature. So as you can see currently it's in ETTL mode. The zoom is in A zoom, which means automatic. It's at 24 millimeter. This icon lets me know that if I had a camera that had a magnified sensor, such as a Rebel 70, 1D Mark IV, something in that nature, that it would adjust for the magnification of the sensor so that the focal length of the lens and then the lens on the flash match up properly. Since this is on a 1DX, a full frame sensor, the 24 millimeters is at default matching the full focal length of the true 24 millimeter focal length of the lens. There is no magnified sensor on this, it's a full frame sensor. So watch this, the 24 millimeter, as I zoom the lens. You'll notice it's going to change. So here's my distance scale. I tap the shutter and it activates the Speedlight. This lets me know that at the aperture of 3.5, I have an effective flash range from 7 feet to 60 feet. Now, as we zoom this, you can see it's changing. 28, 35, 50, and then on up to 70. The flash will zoom automatically up to 200 millimeters and will go as wide as 20 millimeters. Now if I pull out the Fresnel lens on the front of the Speedlight, it will spread that beam of light even further to 14 millimeters. Now that's the auto feature of it. Now as I was explaining before, to use it creatively, we're going to want to activate the zoom button here, and this allows me to take control. So now I could zoom this flash head from 20 millimeters, 24, 28, 35, 50, 70, on up to 200, thereby allowing me to have creative control over the Speedlight. As I shared earlier, the only time I really use direct flash is if I want to create a spotlight effect. So there are occasions where I would have the flash head zoomed in at 200 millimeter and then the lens at 24 millimeter, creating a nice spotlight effect. Now when we're in a bounce mode, we have the flash head straight up, which I know you can't see because I've cut it off in the crop. We want this to be back either at 24 millimeters. So again, activate the zoom, dial it wide. So we're at 24, so we get a nice even spread of light out of the top of the flash, thereby diffusing it, bouncing it, making use of our light modifier. Or we're going to go to default. So I activate the zoom button, and then we go to default, which are the hashtags. Now, as I drop the flash head back into a direct position, we're back to auto zoom feature. Bouncing, nice diffused spread, making good use of your light modifiers. Direct. All right, I've spun the flash head around so that you can actually see the Fresnel lens focusing the beam of light as the flash tube moves inside the flash head. Now notice on the icon we have the hashtags. The flash head is in the configuration of something other than normal. We actually have it pointing straight back. As I hit the zoom button, notice this is now active so I can change it. It is at the default. So now we're going to go to 20 millimeters. So the flash head is pressed right up against the Fresnel lens, thereby spreading out the beam of light, giving us a nice wide angle of light. If I pull out the 14 millimeter spread, well, you can see the wide panel caution sign is there, letting me know that it's going to spread the light out in a very wide pattern. Put that away. And we'll continue with activating the zoom. As you can see, we have an M for the zoom icon, so we know we're in manual zoom mode on the flash head. In manual zoom mode, it will not match the focal length of the lens as you zoom the lens. It's up to you to now take control. So we have it at 20, 24, 28, 35, 50, 70, on up to 200 millimeters. So the flash head is much deeper and longer than on a normal 580. That's why we can go to 200 millimeters so that it really focuses a narrow beam of light onto our subject. And this is where I take over. In manual mode, I would have my flash off camera, controlling it from the master flash, and be able to use it for focus lighting, such as right on the face, or rim lighting from the back. If I'm outside in the scene that we're going to be sharing with you, I actually zoom the flash head into about 50 to 70 millimeters so that I can focus the light right on the face, and then this being the backlight would be at 200 millimeters to give me a nice rim light. It's always nice to have your light modifiers, if you have them, like a grid or a snoot, to really give you a nice defined edge of the light, but this works very, very well. All right, so let's go and take a look at some images. So we're going to get this back into default mode from 200. Back to our hashtags. There we go. articulate the flash head back into its default position. And you'll see the auto zoom feature. And now, as I change the focal length of the lens, it automatically zooms. Okay, let's dive into how our flash can be used creatively by manually zooming in the flash head. Here's a scene that we're setting up for. It's an outdoor scene. We're going to have a model come in here, and we're just going to take a couple speedlights. We're going to use 2 speedlights in group A, ganged up as 1, and we're going to have 1 in group B, and that's going to be our backlight. We're going to manually zoom the flash head. We're using 580 EX2s and radio popper PXs for the wireless communication in this environment. And so our backlight is going to be a 580 EX2 with the flash head zoomed all the way into 105. Our front light is going to be 2 580 EX2s, also controlled or being fired with the radio popper PX receiver. One flash head is going to be zoomed in to 70 millimeters and one is going to be set to 50. So we can actually feather that light a little bit, and you'll see what I mean. So let's go to the next frame. Here we go. This is Gigi. And check out the settings here. So we have a nice histogram. We're using a 1DX with the STE2 transmitter, the radio popper PX. I was working with the one-on-one mentor session with a student here who is familiar with using the 580 EX2s, and she wanted to learn about radio poppers. That's why I'm not using the 600 XRTs in this scene. So the ISO is 200, aperture's f4, 2/50th of a second, and I'm using the 24 to 70 zoom lens. So you could see this is the available light. It's a nice image, but it's really lacking in the sparkle and dynamic look that we can create. So this is our base exposure. So what I've done is I'm going to put a speedlight behind Gigi's head. We're manually zooming that flash head into 105, and then we're going to have 2 off camera right on a light stand in group A, acting as one speed light with the flash head zoomed to 70 millimeters to really bring an emphasis on our face, and the other one at 50, just so we get a spread of light that's nice and feathered while not lighting up the entire scene. So let's go to the next image, and here you go. So you can see I've made one adjustment. We stayed at f4, but I increased my shutter speed to 3/20th of a second. So we've just crossed flash threshold sync speed at 200th of a second. So we're now into high speed flash sync. I did that to darken down the sky, right? Start creating a little bit of a vignette look, bringing in the dynamic look that the speedlights can create. So by manually zooming in that flash head, both on the rear and on the front, I'm getting the light exactly where I want it. I'm not lighting up the entire environment, and I'm giving a nice rim light behind her. So let's back up, see the previous frame. So here we're at 2/50th of a second, f4, no flash. Here we went to high speed flash sync, all the speed lights are engaged, and we're at 3/20th of a second, just knocking down a bit of the ambient light using high speed flash sync. Let's go to our next frame. So boom, jumped in a little bit tighter, went from 28 millimeter range there. Is that what it was? It was 27 millimeter, yep, 28, all the way in the 70. Look at the nice sparkle highlight in her eye. It looks like the sun is setting and just glowing beautiful light right in Gigi's eye. But that's not. Let's zoom in right there. Look at that beautiful highlight in the eye. This is just rocking it out. We're going to give that a second to pop in. And it's nice specular highlight. You know, the light is doing its job. It's bringing that sparkle. We have a little bit of soft rim light going on, separating Gigi from the background. Otherwise, the settings are pretty much the same. If you'll notice one thing though, I allowed more ambient light because we came in tighter and we're now getting the dark trees as a background. We don't have as much sky. So I opened up the ambient light by slowing down the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second. Keep in mind, shutter speed is equal to ambient light, aperture is equal to the flash output. So if I want more ambient light, as you can see, I just slowed down the shutter speed. Let's go to the next frame. This is our overall scene. This is our student. So she's actually working with Gigi, and here you can see the light in the back, 580EX2, flash head zoomed all the way in. I managed to just time off a shot to capture the speedlights as they were going off. 2 speedlights here. This flash head is zoomed in to 70 or 105, I can't exactly remember what, and this one I remember was specifically at 50 to give me a little bit of spread. There's the radio poppers doing all the communication because line of sight would not work in this scenario. So I'm just shooting available light, just trying to capture the scene so you can see what's going on. In this next frame, we're going back to an establishing exposure. So this is the scene, available light. The sun is just about to drop right behind the horizon. As you can see, we're losing the highlight in Gigi's face. It's still a very nice image overall, but I've had to bump up the ISO to 400 because we're losing the ambient. So we're still at 2/50th of a second at f4, but I bumped up the ISO so we could capture more ambient light. Let's go to the next frame. Bam! Check this out. So much more dynamic. We're getting this shaft of light that we're creating by getting this flash head up a little bit high, pointed down toward the ground, with the flash head manually zoomed in to 105, thereby creating this narrow shaft of light. Now the light that's on Gigi is coming from the other 2 speedlights in group A. Rock it on. Same exposure as the previous one, only this is adding a little bit of sparkle with the speedlights and off-camera flash. In this next frame, here you go, we're losing even more ambient light. So the sun is completely dropped. There's no more sparkle in the scene. And if you're an available light photographer, this is what you're stuck with, right? No sparkle. Add a couple speedlights, boom, and away you go. You could create the light you want, right? So here you go. Speedlights, no speedlights. You know, you could shoot either way. It's up to you. I'm just trying to empower you. It's a new year. When you face these what the flash situations, I want you to be able to go into your tool bag, grab out your speedlights, and be confident in how to use them. Remember, these are all manually zoomed, bare flash heads, no light modifiers.
This is how the story goes. It happened this way a year ago.